Hi everybody, this is Derek Murphy. Welcome to the 10th week of Novel Writing Basics. We are still doing editing and we're moving into round 2 of my editing process. So last week we focused on just cleaning up the manuscript and filling in the gaps a little bit so we basically know what happens and you have all the scenes that you will probably keep in the finished manuscript. But you may be feeling like some of your scenes are a little bit flat or not dramatic enough or not satisfying enough, which is all totally fine. A lot of my earlier videos, I really focused on the conflict and the drama, but I also said it would be hard to figure that stuff out until later during the editing stage. So that's kind of where we are now, where we have some pages and we have a story, but now we need to tighten the tension by pulling on some of the threads. And this slide was actually meant to come later, but I'm going to move it up here because I threw in this quick spiderweb graphic, which isn't a great picture, but it's a really powerful metaphor that I want to talk about. So what you're basically doing with a story is try to create this balanced tension. So you have a lot of little things going on. These are the normal plot events, whatever has to happen. But these straight, strong tension lines are bound to something and they're all meeting in the middle. I also like this metaphor because there's the implication of something really dangerous lurking just off stage. A spider web automatically brings up some feelings of suspense or danger because we know there's a spider somewhere hunting prey, which is the purpose of the spider web. I actually added this because someone asked me about subplots and how do we make a subplot. So I wrote this really quick little description of subplots, which I think is useful. I've also said a number of times that good story is tied to characters that we care about. So we don't really care about what's happening unless there's some emotional resonance because we're worried about, whether or not the characters will survive, or about their emotional state. If they're unhappy or angry or whatever, we may feel in tune with that. So a good subplot are usually, or probably, the main character or the sub-character's desires, which conflict with or interrupt the main story quest and goals, forcing a choice that increases the challenge. So your story right now, it might look a little bit like this line. There's one long line. They have to pass through a bunch of stuff, but it's not connected all the way. There's a big missing gap here where some of the threads have broken, which means this is a really unbalanced story. And even up here, you can see that like some of these threads are kind of loosely dangled, but there's no tension here because they're not really tied to anything. They're just kind of ending. So partly what we're doing this week is just identifying all of the main threads and then pulling them a little tighter to keep the tension. And if I need to add a few more threads here, I could do that probably by adding a subplot. If your scene, or especially going into your final battle scene, if it doesn't feel dramatic enough or engaging enough, then you need to make it harder for your characters to get there. You need to have them risk more or give up more so that by the time they've gotten there, they've got a sense of loss. And you can also create more conflict, not only between the antagonist, but with the ally characters also. So you create conflict and tension within people who care about each other and who the reader has torn sympathies with. It's pretty flat to have just the good guys and the bad guys. So to have a really nuanced depth to your novel, you also want to have a lot of tension between all of your good guys, even to the point of possibly betrayal or acting against each other. Personally, I think that's what defines a subplot. It's not just story events, it's a mini quest from one of your sub characters that your readers also care about. And I actually finished that vampire dystopia I was working on a few weeks ago and published it. So now I'm switching gears and I'm working on this alien invasion dystopian sci-fi novel. And so I'm going to be using a lot of examples from that book this week, and maybe also pull in some other editing examples later, because I'm at this stage of the process, which is basically the round two of the editing. I've already been through it first. Everything's kind of in the right place. It's all got the right stuff. So now I'm just kind of teasing out that conflict and suspense. So first I'll just mention a few of the main characters so you can see how this subplot might work. What's basically happened, and this is a sequel, this is a book too, so we already have the first book, which introduced a lot of the, what's going on, a lot of the like world building and explanation of how the world works. So we have these three characters who have escaped the alien mine where they were searching for some ancient alien weapon, and now they're kind of coming to terms with each other and their goals and what's going to happen next. Rhea is the main character. She mostly wants to go and save her brother who's still under alien control, and she also has some magical superpowers she can't control yet. Massey is an actual alien that she's befriended in the mines, who's against those other aliens. And then Elon is a local rebel. Elon's kind of the love interest, but they're always butting heads and clashing a lot. There's a lot of conflict between them, so I don't think there's really been much romance between them yet. So these are the three main characters. It's a little bit of a love triangle. Most of my books tend to have one female protagonist and then two main guy people, even though the alien is really not a love interest. But the reason I like to have this kind of trinity of characters is because each of those will be from a different background. They'll have their own allies and concerns and fears. The two guys at this point are always fighting and arguing. They don't really trust each other. But still, this is the main plot. They're all kind of embroiled in the same plot, and even though they have different ideas about what they want to do, they're still kind of stuck together, looking out for each other, trying to figure out what to do next. And that's fine. This story holds together pretty well throughout the book, but I would like to add or bring in a little bit more subplot. And so the other nice thing about subplot is that if it's just focused on one main story quest, then there aren't the difficult decisions. So remember I said here they interrupt the main story quest and goals. So on the one hand, this could be additional challenges or barriers, which will, just give if you increase the distance or the challenges between what the characters have to get through to arrive at the successful conclusion, that just makes the journey more fraught with danger and ultimately more worthwhile. But also if you can force a choice, especially, I should have said like an emotional choice, but the idea with a subplot is because it's not just the antagonists who are forcing the issue, but it's actually other allies who might be on the same side or even that they care about, that creates a real internal conflict of emotions where they have to choose between, their friends or saving the world or saving their little brother, things like that, where it's really big, difficult moral challenges that they have to wrestle with. So first you have to introduce these other side characters and get readers to care a little bit about them and show that the main characters care about the side characters. And then you have to show the obstacle or the aim where one of the side characters is in trouble or they want something else, and one of the main characters wants to go and help them or save them. So in my case, in this book too, Rhea does, like I mentioned, have a little brother who's in trouble. That's her main quest, is she wants to get help from her new allies, the rebels, to break into the compounds and rescue her brother from the aliens. But there's also a little, a minor girl she met in the mines who's just a really young girl who kind of latches onto her. So that's another point of sympathy where Rhea is trying to protect this little girl who she saved from the mines, who was actually at the rebel camp. So she doesn't necessarily want to run off and risk her life to save her brother because she's worried about what's going to happen to this minor girl if she leaves. There's some other characters from book one when she was in the compounds. There's another girl about her age who's not really a friend, but a really interesting character that I would like to bring back. I don't actually know where she is right now in book two, so I may have to figure out, does she make an appearance in book two? Because I think right now she doesn't. And then Gabe is kind of her girlfriend, her boyfriend. There was a lot of like really emotional stuff that happened with them in book one, so I just want to make sure I know where they are and if they're influencing the plot. They probably will have a really big role in book three, so I don't want to kind of drop the ball on their story for too long. And then there are some antagonists, the alien general, the alien prince, some characters that she met at the end of book one that she might have some new problems with. So, as a quick summary of what we talked about last week, this is the second pass of editing where we're really focused on teasing out the conflict. Um, we've got all the scenes in the right places, and it might make sense to us, but maybe we haven't fully communicated to readers what's going on or why this matters. So, we need to focus on why does it need to happen at all? Why are these things even happening? How are they related to the bigger plot? Why does it matter? Which means what's the outcome that they're hoping to get that makes this action or decision necessary, and then also teasing out the motivation, the stakes, the intrigue, the conflict. These might all be already present in the scene, but you can definitely build on them or increase the drama or the conflict while also making it a little clearer to readers what's actually happening. The main thing you probably need to focus on is the urgency, which means you need to keep the ball rolling by checking in and figuring out what's their purpose, what do your characters want. It must be a pressing need, it must be something that makes them anxious or stressed, like whatever the danger is or the risk is, it has to matter enough that it makes them uncomfortable so that they're worried about it. And if they're worried about it, they're going to think about, what do I need to do to resolve this tension or this conflict? Then they will take some action, they will learn something new, or something will happen or change or be revealed, and then they'll make a new plan to react against the new knowledge, set a new plan or course of action, and take action again. Kind of just keep pushing the ball forward. The other thing I would pay attention to is emotional consistency. Why are they so happy, angry, flirty, etc.? What internal thought processes are responsible for their external outbursts? So what I see often in especially young adult fantasy is the feisty heroine, because especially in like urban fantasy, readers kind of want the really tough, feisty heroine who's always bantering and picking fights. And it can seem like you're adding drama if you just have characters who get upset and yell at each other, or they have outbursts with like the question exclamation point, which is a punctuation I would try to avoid almost all the time. You don't add drama by adding more exclamation points. That's not the way to do it. And if you just have emotional outbursts, it can actually seem melodramatic or flat. So I would also watch like the number of times your characters cry. If they burst into tears all the time throughout the novel, that's not going to be very realistic. You want to save the tears towards the very end when they're finally overwhelmed by the plot events. This isn't to say that your characters can't be emotional. They should be, but they probably won't show all of their emotions on their face all the time. Most people do a pretty good job of hiding their emotions. And they're not going to flip-flop really quickly. So if you have, for example, a fight scene where one of them punches the other one, and then in the next chapter there's kind of a fun, happy scene where they're teasing or flirting with each other, that still can be fine, but you need to show what happened in the middle with the change. Probably after the fight scene, she feels bad because she was just acting out and it's not really his fault anyway. Maybe she learned something deep about him which makes her care a little more for him. and see that he feels really bad about what's going on. So you kind of diffuse the tension. And then maybe she does something where she's like, I shouldn't have punched him. He's not my enemy. I know he's trying to help, and there's nothing I can do about it right now. So right now, I'm going to change my focus. So maybe her emotional outburst was about something she couldn't control and she can't change or fix right now. So it was the most pressing thing. It was the most urgent thing. But since that goal failed and she has no control over it, it's reasonable for her to move on and put that aside for the moment. She just has to think it through, where there's a sentence or two that says something like, there's nothing I could do about it right now, so the best thing I could do is pretend to be nice to my new friends, get some food, take a shower, get some sleep. They just arrived. I got off topic. I'm actually talking about this sci-fi book again that I'm working on. But my point is, like, she can decide that the reason she got upset is no longer the pressing issue, and she's going to wait and play it slow and pretend to get along with everybody while she's learning more about her new allies, looking for an opportunity to go back and get the thing that she wanted earlier that made her so upset. So just something that touches on that change, that emotional disturbance, and the change from being angry to being, at least on the surface, more easygoing or happier. So let me talk a little bit more about this novel I'm working on, because these are the scenes that I'm trying to do a chapter a day, which is actually a little bit hard. My chapters are 2,000 or 3,000 words. I can edit maybe 1,000 or 2,000 words an hour in theory, although this is actually taking me longer. So I probably do 4 hours a day or something to get through a chapter. But these are some of the things that I have been working on. So the basic story that is present in the first draft is those three protagonists return to the rebel base with a captured alien who's one of the protagonists. They get arrested, and so she returns with the captured alien who's her friend who gets arrested, and the rebel ally who is the son of the infamous rebel leader. So this is all of the conflict that's present in the scene is already kind of there. She escapes the alien minds. She gets her freedom. She was helped in her escape attempt from this alien and from this mysterious rebel who's sort of the love interest, and they all survive and get back to the rebel base. That's the beginning of book 2, but there's immediately a lot of conflict because she basically has a prisoner of war with this captured alien who gets immediately taken away and arrested. She was hoping when she got to the base, like they put handcuffs on him, but she was hoping when she got to the base and spoke to somebody in power, maybe she could explain that he's no threat and that he helped them and whatever, but they lock him up anyway because he is one of the aliens who took over the planet. And the other little reveal is that that mysterious rebel she was traveling with is actually the son of an infamous rebel leader who was supposed to have died decades ago. So that's kind of a big, it's a big revelation where this guy she just thought was some random guy. He's like 18 or 19. He turns out to be not just a rebel, but actually somebody kind of important with ties to the rebel leader, which also creates a lot of conflict between his character and her and the captured alien and everybody. So here are some of the changes that I made. I increased the conflict between the rebel leader and the son. So instead of just, welcome home, they're on the same team, I put a lot of disapproval on the son. And rather than this guy, like, he was just supposed to go on a simple little task, but he ended up meeting Rhea, who's the protagonist, and then following her into the mines, which was basically a suicide mission, in order to retrieve this piece of alien technology. So he was actually super brave and risked everything to bring back this prize. But his father's really disapproving because he didn't follow orders and he took too big of a risk, and also because he brought back, some girl nobody knows who she is and an actual alien. So even though he returned thinking he was a conquering hero, where he's done more for the rebellion than his father could do in 30 years, his father still kind of treats him a little bit mean in public with all the other generals of the rebellion, which makes him really, pissed off and frustrated. It also creates a lot of sympathy for his character because we can see kind of his daddy issues and trying to prove himself. So the other thing that I needed was changes prompt action, which is checking in on the alien. So they arrive, Massey, who's the alien, gets taken away and put in prison, and then later she wants to check on him and make sure that he's okay. And there was already the right stuff in the book. There was something like she is suddenly worried that he might be being tortured or something, so she immediately wants to see him. So there's just like, there was a little bit of a gap between, there was a nice scene where they were exploring the new world that they're in, and which is this abandoned ski loft like on the top of a mountain. It's a really cool scene. But like he got taken away, but everybody promised her like he won't be hurt, he'll be okay. So she kind of is semi comfortable with it, at least for a few hours while she gets something to eat and takes a shower. But then there needs to be some really big shift when, suddenly she has a believable reason to demand to go and see him and check that he's okay. And in order to play up that contrast, I have to really make it more of a dramatic, hard shift. So she is having fun. I'll probably add in like a light, maybe not like a formal dance scene, but maybe some of she's hanging out with Elon, who's the rebels' son's leader. Maybe some of their friends are off drinking. Maybe she meets up with the young miner girl who she helped to rescue. I might throw in a couple of new characters. Basically, so she's like forgetting about the alien for a little while, having a little bit of fun. I might put her in a semi-romantic scene with Elon because I want there to be some romantic tension, and then I want to break it really hard. So maybe she doesn't necessarily kiss him, but maybe there's an almost kiss scene or like a little bit of a emotional intimacy scene. And then suddenly she overhears something really dramatic, probably something like she hears some guards talking about the weirdo alien. Maybe they took off his mask, maybe they're talking about an autopsy or cutting him open or his blue skin or whatever. So there has to be a external point of new information that forces a dramatic emotional change. So it's not just suddenly, oh, I wonder what happened with my alien friend, I want to go check on him now. It's, oh my God, what are they doing to him? It suddenly becomes the most important thing because of the new information. So it's already all there. The pieces were already all there. I'm just really playing out when you have a scene, there has to be a point of new information or a change that prompts or demands action that wasn't there previously, or else she would have just taken that action earlier. So another one I played up is a disbelief in her powers. She actually, at the end of book one, she's basically a superhero. She took down an alien ship with these new superpowers, which is amazing. But if she just comes into the rebel camp a full-on superhuman who can blow up alien ships, she will be too strong for the plot. Because if the story isn't difficult, if all the things are too easy for her, then it's not a good story. It won't be challenging. So on the one hand, she doesn't know how to control it, and it's dangerous. On the other hand, not everybody believes her. Some of the other rebels were with her, and they saw what she did. But for example, Elon's father, who's a rebel leader, doesn't believe any of it. So he's, like he's trying to tell his dad, I know what I saw. She has this power. She's really valuable. And his father just doesn't believe his son or her, and actually believes that she might be a spy, that it was all just a setup to bring in this alien to find out where the camp is. So it puts a lot of conflict because they treat her as not this powerful super goddess, but as a potential spy. They also don't believe in her magical abilities. They're more like sci-fi focused. So they're talking about ancient alien powers and this tomb that she discovered, and she's the only one. She and the alien are the only ones who actually saw all of it. The alien knows what it is because his culture knows about the history, but to all the humans, they wouldn't really know any of this stuff. So they all are just taking her word for it. It creates a lot of conflict just to have them not believe her, so that she has to kind of fight to prove herself. Um, it also gives her kind of a weakened status. So rather than coming in with a position of power, she comes in, she's not trusted, she's distrusted, she might be put in prison or locked up a little bit. She just has to, you want to make it harder for her to do anything by increasing the conflict and the stakes around her. And an easy way to do that is just to have people not believe her. So I also added some touching intimacy. They didn't really have a shower scene, but they basically they've been living in the mines for months as prisoners. They're finally escaped. There was a question, I think I talked about it last week, about how often you should talk about bathroom stuff, and the answer is not very often, but if it makes sense in the plot. Um, so this is a scene where they can. It also it just adds a pause where rather than running straight from conflict to conflict, um, and that's also part of if your novel seems breathless, if it's all just conflict to conflict with scenes, it can feel a little bit too rushed. And so it can be really good to slow things down with some scenes where they have an opportunity to share stories or to talk about things, or even just, take a breath and reflect. Often, after a really strong conflict scene, you want to do a slow paced, touching intimacy scene. It's also an opportunity to introduce a new setting. So I have a really cool, we'll talk more about setting and description next week, but I was able to build up this scene description for a new place just by adding, they're going to go and get cleaned up and take a shower. I can focus on that and create a really deep scene description that's awesome, because what readers are going to remember are the scenes. You've got to have all the conflict and all the story, but that stuff won't put the pictures in their heads. It might make them feel things, but it won't make them see things. And they will remember the things they see longer than they remember the things they feel. I think that's right, but it might be they'll remember the emotion, the things they see that are infused with emotion. But anyway, it's also a place where, they just escape together, but they don't really trust each other. And I don't think they've ever actually had a really deep heart to heart. They've never really had the opportunity to get to know each other. So for the first time, she has some one-on-one, low stakes time to spend with Elon, which is a good place to build character sympathy or find out a little bit more about his backstory. So he will have, I haven't quite figured it out yet. We've already introduced that his dad's kind of an asshole, so he's got some emotional problems there. And we can also introduce that his mother died or disappeared a long time ago, just like hers, which will deepen her feelings for this character and also readers' feelings for this character, so that before we get into the increased drama or conflict or stakes, we want the readers to care about these main characters as much as possible. Something similar is going to happen She just found out that his father's the rebel leader. She didn't know that. She's also going to find out that her alien friend isn't just some random alien. He's actually an alien prince. Um, so both of her close allies have been lying to her, and she learns these big discoveries about him. So the alien is going to go through a similar process later, where she finds out a big reveal about him, and then once they get out of conflict, they're going to have some deeper backstory, intimacy sharing scenes, which will make us feel bad for the main characters and also understand their motivations a little more. I'm also going to acknowledge some gratitude and loss. I could do this because it's a book too. If I was, this is like chapter 3 or 4. If this was a book 1, um, I'm not sure I would be doing all of this stuff, but especially this one, I probably wouldn't do till towards the end of book 1. And because this is a book 2 and we've already gone through a lot of stuff, I might want to briefly touch on how far we've come, what we've lost, what we've gained, to remind readers of what the stakes are in this particular story. And so one of the ways I'm going to do this is she saved that minor girl, but I want to add kind of a parent figure. There was also a minor girl who died, so she feels responsible for the one who died and for the other characters who died in the mines. She could meet one of the parents of one of the dead girls, which would add a whole lot of drama and guilt. And there's always, like, you can always either increase the tension or decrease the tension. So, for example, if she met one of the mothers of one of the girls who died in the mines, the mother could forgive her and hug her and tell her it's okay, it wasn't your fault, which would decrease the tension, and it's a really nice, touching scene. Or the mother could blame her and say, you escaped the mines. Did you see my girl? Why didn't you save her? And be really angry at her, even though it's not really her fault, but that'll just really increase the conflict and the tension and the drama, and also the guilt. It's also a way to introduce new characters. Since this is a book 2 and it doesn't take place at the same place book 1 happened, it's going to need a little more characters to increase the drama. And like I mentioned with that spider web, we basically want more threads pulling in different directions, which means we might need some more complexity or some more characters. In my case, she's going to go visit Clarice, who's the young girl she rescued from the mines, and I'll probably add in an aunt, or maybe not her parents, probably an aunt, so that there's another new character who has some dramatic background with the main character. Probably she'll just be thanking her for saving her niece, but she did also see another rebel get killed who is probably going to be Clarice's uncle and this new character's husband. So she's going to meet this lady and have a nice touching scene first, and then later realize that she already saw her husband die and have to tell her that. So it's going to add a lot of conflict and depth later also. Another thing I'm going to be doing is to break on the reveals or the changes. So when the new information happens, that's when I want to break the scene with a hard break. So rather than the new information and then a reaction and then some other stuff, to make it really clear and obvious where the important stuff is, you probably need to have a section break or a chapter break. So you need to rearrange the content of your chapters or scenes a little bit so that you don't get to the new information until the end of the scene, and then you add a hard break. And the way I usually do that is when I'm trying to figure out what happens in my story, when I'm stuck or I don't feel like my story is as strong, I'll go back in and I'll start making checklists in the manuscript from memory. So I went ahead and went into my manuscript. I'm on about chapter 3. I think I'm trying to work on chapter 4 today. So before I edit and polish the story or the scene, I have to make sure it aligns with the major turning points of the plot. So that's why building a little checklist like this can be really helpful, just to kind of keep in mind what needs to happen or what really matters, and then align everything else in the scene so that you're leading up to that one thing. A lot of this I already talked about. They escape the mines, they get to the rebel camp. Eline is the rebel leader's son, which is a revelation. Masi, the alien, is arrested, which is conflict. Then they explore the new location, which is a light, fun and games, world worth saving type of scene. It also introduces a couple characters. All my characters were really serious, and so I think the book was a little bit fast paced because there's just all this danger and intrigue. So to give it a little bit of depth, I want to have a couple comedic relief kind of fun, easygoing characters. So I'll probably add one or two of those in. She finds out Massey is in danger or being mistreated, so there's a pressing need. She goes to help him. And while she's helping him, the mine is destroyed. So this is the mine that they escaped from, which still has thousands of humans. But now that she escaped and she took this, basically the weapon the aliens were looking for, they don't need the mine anymore. So this is a big deal because it's a lot of guilt. I could increase the guilt if, for example, when she comes back, she rescued 12 people or something, but instead of it being, wow, you escaped and you rescued some of the miners, I can make it a lot more negative. Like, you escaped, you ran away, and you left thousands of people behind, and all of those people are still in danger. And then when the mine gets destroyed, even though it's not really her fault, well, I mean, she did find and take the artifact that they were looking for. So anyway, it kind of is her fault. So it's a big shocking turn of events because it's a big deal. It's unexpected. A lot of people got hurt. It raises the stakes. And it also makes her feel more personally responsible. And so the next thing that happens is actually a drone attack. But there's a little bit of a disconnect here because, like I said, I want a slow reflection scene. All that stuff I just talked about guilt, that's not going to come in this scene. This is just going to be the mine is destroyed, cliffhanger, break chapter, and the next scene would have all of that deep guilt and reflection stuff. And also, to get that deep guilt reflection, I would have to have built all of that up earlier by showing that there are other humans who still have people they care about in the mines, who she left behind. And then also there's going to be a drone attack, so I have to figure out exactly the details of why haven't the drones attacked before if the aliens don't know where they are. What's changed? Why are they getting closer? It could be a little bit random. Usually they're all hiding out underground, and there's probably routine drones in the area anyway. And I think they have an idea of roughly the area they're in, but not exactly where they are. So it's possible that they are outside doing something, and then the drones come, and rather than running away like usual, she defeats the drones, which raises the stakes because now they probably know where she is. And also the rebels see what she's really capable of. So in a simple checklist, the drone attack is just what happens, but the subtext is why it matters to the plot. And mostly it's because the next new critical mission, the next thing that they actually have to do is to go and retrieve the radio. They stole an alien ship and they crashed it to escape, but now they're going to go back and try to get the alien radio from the ship so that they can listen in on what the aliens are saying. So the mission was already part of the story. I already knew that's kind of what had to happen. They're going to choose to put themselves in danger. But the why of it, the why it matters, and the why it has to happen, that's the deeper stuff. So because of the drone attack, they're worried. Do they have to abandon? Do they have to leave? Do the aliens know where they are? They're worried about this stuff and asking questions. They have to think, if only we knew what the Creon knew, if only we could listen to their conversations, and they realize they do have an alien captive now who might be an ally who can understand the aliens. If they go and steal a radio, Massey can translate, which means he can prove himself, he can earn his place. They'll stop treating him like a prisoner and maybe treat him like an ally, even though he's an alien. So it's not just like, not only can they figure out what the alien are planning by stealing the radio, but also it gives them a chance to kind of redeem Massey and prove himself as well. And then to make sure I'm tying up all the loose ends, I would have to also add, why does she care about helping the rebels at all? She's not even really a rebel. All she really wants to do is go and save her brother. So there would have to be some little discussion of, I don't care about the radio. All I want is my brother. Well, the best way to go save your brother is to figure out, the Crayon intelligence, the alien intelligence, figure out their security and what they're planning, and figure out the best time. So it's kind of like a quid pro quo where the rebels might say, if you go get this radio for us, then we will help you to save your brother, but the one has to come before the other. That gives her a real reason to be invested in this crucial mission and how it plays out, because it's not a separate side mission that takes her away from her goal, but it's actually a critical mission that is necessary to bring her closer to her goal. The other thing I want to be doing is planting seeds. So when you first wrote the first rough draft, you may not have known how everything works together. And now that you're adding conflict and you can kind of see what's going to happen, you can do a better job of planting the seeds for intrigue and suspense. And the way to do it, like we talked about earlier, is actually removing information. So for example, one of the big twists that's going to happen in a few chapters is that let me go back to this picture, her father basically abandoned her and her brother. Her mom was already gone after the aliens attacked. Her father disappeared a few years later. She's been trying to survive by herself, completely isolated. And one of the things for her father, she's really anxious and terrified of the world because her father really drilled in on her how dangerous the world is, not to trust humans or aliens or anybody. And he also talked about this New Terra rebellion that failed, and that's why the rebels are really dangerous and she should stay away from them, because the rebels are fighting a lost cause against these alien invaders. But one of the really big twists is going to be that her father was at least adjacent to the rebels, that he knew some of the rebels. Maybe he was sort of working for them a long time ago, and maybe he was friends with Elon's father, who's the actual leader of the rebels. So the first time that she meets his father, she doesn't know any of this stuff, but it's going to be a reveal. So his father, the rebel leader, he would recognize her at least by name when she comes in and introduces herself and says her name. He would at least recognize her name and sit up a little straighter and know that her father was his old friend. He may even have crucial information about what happened to her father, and I can increase the stakes in the conflict by having him lie a little bit. So at this point forward, every day that he is not telling her that he knows her father, he's kind of lying to her or keeping secrets. And I'm not going to, reveal all of that on the first meeting, but I want to at least add some weirdness. And you have to show it without making it a big deal so that it's there, but it's not too obvious. So basically, she'll say her name and his face will just glitch for a minute where he just kind of freezes. He doesn't react. He doesn't, say, "Oh, I knew your father," or something obvious. But there's just a little microsecond of recognition or shock or something. he flinches or he tenses his muscles or something. It's not a big deal, but you mention it because it's going to have meaning later. And she's not really going to think about it. Um, because otherwise, if you just skipped it completely and did the reveal later, readers would ask, well, wait a second, how come he didn't say anything when she said her name? Or like, if there's no warning at all, then it will seem too sudden. So you want to plant the seeds a little bit just so it later makes sense, and seems inevitable or likely. And then finally, you have to make the motivation threads or the why a little more obvious. So this is the stuff that happens that I already talked about. But I'm going to go over it a little bit again, just to see if I can clarify a little bit. The one I didn't talk about was the escape, so I'll get to that in a minute. So the first one is the alien interview. The rebels have this captured alien who is her friend, and they're torturing him for information. But I have to figure out what exactly are they hoping to get out of him, that she can help them with. So it does make sense that they would want to ask him something, but it's not clear what are they asking him, what are they trying to get out of him. I think maybe they're just trying to figure out, can he be trusted or not? Is he lying? Is he reporting back to the aliens? Do they know where they are? Are they coming? There could be some urgent questions they want to be asking because they're afraid. But they'll mostly just want to know, what are the weaknesses? How can we kill the aliens or defeat the aliens? And they're going to assume that he's not going to tell them the truth, so it might shift to duress or torture pretty quickly, which is what she needs to come and stop, by asking him questions. So the information gap here is just why is this happen? Why are the interviews happening at all? What are the questions that they're asking? What are they hoping to gain? And then the mind is going to explode. And this is a big shocking twist, but it'll just feel like a sudden event. It won't be traumatic. If I want to make it traumatic, I have to do a little bit of reflection on all the people that we left behind, the people who died in the mine, at least some mention of there are still thousands of people who got left behind. And like I said, if I wanted to really increase the guilt, I could have somebody who's angry at her. Maybe it's just some old drunk guy who's mad because, his son is still in the mines and she doesn't know him because there are thousands of people in the mines, but he might be still irrationally angry at her for not saving everybody. And if I add a little scene like that, that'll make this mine explosion a lot more powerful. Then I have the secret mission where they have to go and get the radio, which is a good idea, to go and get the radio and listen into to the Creon. I just have to make it more in line with the actual characters' story quests. So Master the alien wants to be trusted, so he's got to kind of prove that he's loyal. Elon is trying to make his dad proud or something. Rhea is just trying to get back to her brother, so there has to be some urgency of why this secret mission is going to happen and what each character is hoping to get out of it. And then the last thing that's going to happen somewhere around the midpoint is the escape. And basically, she has this weapon or power that's the reason the aliens came to Earth and they're hunting for it. So she is putting everybody in danger. Possibly it's that the rebel forces aren't that interested in going and saving her brother, and she really wants to save her brother, so there could be some conflict there. But also, it seems like probably the drones or the Krayn or the alien are hunting for her, and they're getting closer to this rebel fortress hideout. And if they're going to attack, when they find her, they'll probably kill everybody else. So she has to want to protect or preserve that rebel base where she's hiding out so that she doesn't put anybody else in danger. And then finally, there's probably also something where they are mistreating Massey, her alien friend. Maybe she unearths a plot where some people are, planning to do something against him, so he is in danger. That way, the more motivations you can give, the more likely the action. So it can just be one really good one. I mean, even if they were gonna, kill Massey, she could decide her only option is to escape. But by adding several different, pieces of motivation all together, it makes her action seem more believable because she's basically, running out into the open, um, risking everything. She needs to have the more danger they're going into, the more motivation they need to have. Otherwise, it's going to feel um, kind of silly or unreasonable if she's already safe and has a comfortable place. If she just risks everything to go off on her own, um, it's going to make more sense if you give them strong, believable motivations to put themselves into additional danger or conflict. So that's all I have for this week. I did get 5 writing samples, so I'm probably going to make another video where I go through and critique those writing samples. It can be really difficult to figure out um, editing, so I think the checklists will help you to look for and identify the right things. And I hope in this video I've given you some ideas of how you could add or increase the conflict or the tension or the motivation, which I think is the really important stuff for this part, which is figuring out the why it matters. But I'll make another video and probably put it in this week's course section also, where I can go through some of those examples and just show you what I would be doing or comment on some of the things that I could improve, because I think maybe learning by example is a good way to learn how to edit. Next week we're going to be talking about description and scene building, which is one of my favorite parts. And a lot of people think it should come a lot earlier, but it's easier to do towards the end when your story's all there and you're just improving, like you already have the action, then you're building out the world or what it looks like. I mean, you can have notes earlier and you'll have like some idea earlier, but making it awesome or making it better, that usually happens, at least for me, in the late editing stages. So we're going to talk more about that next week. Thanks. Bye bye.